we are finishing up the Beatitudes. So we are going to be in Matthew 5, verses 1 through 12 again. And for those of you who may not have been here for the past 2 weeks, we have been talking about the Sermon on the Mount, or that first portion of the Sermon on the Mount, which is the Beatitudes, and they were delivered by Jesus to his disciples in a group that had gathered. And this was pretty early in his ministry when he was teaching this message. So we are going to read together Matthew 5, verses 1 through 12, and then we're going to pick up on verse 8 where we left off last week. Now when he saw the crowds, he went up on the mountainside and sat down. His disciples came to him, and he began to teach them, saying, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called sons of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you." Thanks be to God for the reading, the hearing, and the understanding of his holy word. Now, if we jump right in and we go to verse 8, that is, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God." What does it mean to be pure in heart, do you think? A pure heart. So if we're talking, let's say, metals, there are impurities mixed inside of a metal. So how do you get rid of the impurities in a metal? Fire, high heat. There's a process that it goes through that the heat gets really, really hot, and the impurities bubble up to the surface, and I don't know if they're swiped off, if they're poured off, or how that works, but the impurities are separated from that metal, and they are disposed of. So that solution, that metal, is then unmixed. It contains only one element. So if we apply that same image to our hearts, that tells us that our heart must contain only one motive. So Proverbs 4:23 tells us to guard our hearts, because everything we do flows from it. Our hearts are where motives live, our desires live, our goals and all our emotions are living in our hearts. So to be pure in heart, it means to have all of that focused on God. We have one goal: to love God. So all of those motives and those desires and the goals and our emotions should act and react accordingly. A pure heart does not entertain worldly goals such as power and wealth, or the desires of earthly pleasures. Instead, our hearts as Christians should focus on love. Those who see God will have their hearts on things above, and their actions, so what they do and what they say is going to support that goal. They will know God and they will see God, because that's where our focus will be. Verse 9, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. The Bible translation that I frequently use to study is the New Living Translation. It's just a translation that's easier for me to process and to understand. But verse 9 in it says it a little bit differently, so I'm going to read it to you. It says, God blesses those who work for peace, for they will be called the children of God. If any of you have ever tried to be a peacemaker, you know that it is not an easy thing to do. It does take work. So when I saw that and I read that, it just jumped right out at me, because peacemaking takes an effort. We must acknowledge that there are people out there who spend their days being negative and angry. And I know that none of you fall into that category, but do you know somebody who, either in your family, at work, or acquaintance, in your neighborhood, is negative and angry all the time? They find something wrong with everything. And not only do they enjoy that kind of turmoil themselves, but they want the people around them to be all stirred up and anxious and upset as well. If you don't have someone like that around you, you truly are blessed. But sadly, I think that most of us have at least one individual that we could name. Don't name them, I don't want to know, but we could. It is a difficult task to calm the waters. No matter what the situation is, I can tell you that the answer is love. When you're around someone who feeds off of negativity and chaos, if you give them more anger and more chaos, is it going to make the situation better? Absolutely not. You're just going to add, fire to the flame or flame to the fire. I'm not sure which one that goes, but the only way that situation is going to improve in their life and in their hearts is by showing love. And it's a very difficult thing to do. But I have a brief story to tell you to illustrate the point. There was a small country town, and two men, had become bitter enemies through the years. They hadn't spoken, and they would go to great lengths to avoid each other. A new pastor began serving at the local church. There was only one in the community. And it didn't take long for him to uncover the deep rift that existed between the two farmers. When the pastor asked each of them what had damaged the relationship, neither one of them could even remember how it started. So the pastor decided that he was going to help them resolve this issue. He spoke to Harry first and asked him what he thought about Robert. Harry said very quickly that he had no use for that man. And the pastor responded, someone in town told me that Robert was a hard-working fella. Harry said, yeah, that's right. Ain't no man work harder to provide for his family. The next day, the pastor then had a conversation with Robert. Robert, what do you think about your neighbor, Harry? Robert grumbled, can't stand the man. The pastor said, well, a friend told me that Harry volunteers at the soup kitchen every week. Robert responded, well, that's true. He never misses an opportunity to help the less fortunate. Do you know, Robert, what he told me about you? Can't imagine. Can only imagine. He told me that you are a hard worker and you always provide for your family. When the pastor saw Harry next, he was sure to share what Robert had said about him volunteering at the soup kitchen and always helping the needy. The next Sunday, not everybody would have noticed, but when they saw each other from across the room, there was a slight nod, a slight acknowledgement. And a few Sundays later, there was even a handshake after worship. Sometimes these issues can be resolved quickly, and sometimes they take a period of time before it can be worked out. But we all can be peacemakers if we put some effort into it. And guess what? As Christians, it's in our job description. We are to bring peace to others. We are not to stir the pot and get everybody all upset. We are to be peaceful. And who is the best example of a peacemaker but Jesus himself? He is, after all, called the Prince of Peace. John 14:27 says this, "Peace I leave you, my peace I give to you. Not as the world gives do I give to you. Let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid." Jesus gives us that peace that passes all understanding. And it's a peace on the inside, a peaceful mind, a contented heart, knowing that even if everything around us is upside down, that we have the peace of knowing that Jesus will never leave us alone, and that we will be with him forever in eternity. Verses 10 through 12 says, "Blessed is he who is persecuted for my sake, for the kingdom of heaven is theirs." So I'm actually going to read to you again verses 10 through 12. "Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you." It is hard to be rejoicing when you're going through a painful loss or a painful circumstances. You've just got a health diagnosis that was not what you were hoping for. It is hard to be rejoicing in those type of circumstances. But the scripture tells us that great is our reward in heaven. There are 3 additional scriptures that tell us the same message. James 1:2 through 4. "Consider it all joy, my brethren, when you encounter various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces endurance. And let endurance have its perfect result, so that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing." In John 15:18 through 20, "If the world hates you, keep in mind that it hated me first. If you belong to the world, it would love you as its own. As it is, you do not belong to the world. I have chosen you out of the world. That is why the world hates you. Remember what I told you. A servant is not greater than his master. If they persecuted me, they will also persecute you. and 1 Peter 1, 6 through 7. In this you greatly rejoice, even though now for a little while, if necessary, you have been distressed by various trials, so that the proof of your faith may be found to result in praise and glory at the revelation of Jesus Christ. So we have been studying the Beatitudes for 3 weeks now, and I noticed something that I thought was pretty cool. And if you'll go back to the third verse that we read, I'm going to give Tim just a minute to get there. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And then if you'll go back to, I think, the 9th verse. Nope, the next one. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Did you notice anything? The Beatitudes begin with inheriting the kingdom of heaven, and it ends with inheriting the kingdom of heaven. So do you want to inherit the kingdom of heaven? Yes, absolutely. So we need to be studying these Beatitudes, and we need to be working on developing these characteristics that Jesus said were so important. We will enjoy the fullness of eternity in heaven with God forever. Great will be our reward. So keep drawing close and learning about Jesus and the love of God. There are new truths to learn every day. There is no way that you could learn and know everything there is to learn about God and Jesus. There's layers upon layers upon layers to learn about him and how it will apply to your life. I had an experience this week, another one. It seems like I've been sharing a few experiences with you lately that God is using to help me learn. And I hope that he does the same thing in your life and that you're listening. But my experience this week, I'm a branch manager of a bank. So I have a team. Our entire team is 6 of us, and we run the office. Mostly I'm supposed to, but sometimes they run me, but that's neither here nor there. But our branch finally hit expectations for the month of July. So the team that were there before I got there, they couldn't tell me the last time that they hit their goals. So the expectations are just a list of goals that they give you in different categories, and they tell you the behaviors that you need to follow to achieve the numbers and the goals that they've set for you. So in June, we were at 89%, and I thought that was pretty special. And then July, we actually exceeded our goals, and we hit 115% of our goals. And this is extremely exciting to me. I didn't achieve this on my own. It took all of us working together and practicing the behaviors to get the end result. I tell you this because I knew those behaviors. I knew what they were, and if you follow the behaviors, they say you'll meet the goals. Well, every time I talk to my boss, he's harping on the same message. Just follow the behaviors. Just set aside time, do this, do that, every time. Conference call, phone call, if there was a video call, if there was a meeting in person, the message is all the same, and after a while, you just get kind of tired of hearing it. I hope he doesn't watch this, but anyway, actually, I would tell him to his face anyway, but that's okay. But he is an encourager, and he encouraged me often, and I knew what he was saying was the truth, but not until I saw the result did I get all excited. I mean, I was really, really excited to see that we came together, that we did what we were supposed to be doing. And sometimes I feel like it's the same way about our spiritual journey, that we hear the same things over and over again. You need to do a better job of practicing your spiritual disciplines. You need to read the Bible more. You need to pray more. Yep. We do. But great is our reward in heaven. Sometimes on the spiritual journey, we don't get to see the result of our efforts. Sometimes God will give us some little blessings along the way, or you'll get to reap the seed that somebody else planted. But we may not get to see the result of living this Christian life and how we've touched other people and how we've made their lives better and how we introduced them to Jesus and what a difference it made, or how we gave that extra can of soup at the soup kitchen. We won't see the results until we're in heaven. And that's going to be part of our reward. Great is our reward. It will be worth it. So I am encouraging you this morning to not give up and to make an effort to draw closer to the Lord and practice those things that you should be practicing, and then we can enjoy the wonderful reward in heaven. But you know what? Jesus will never leave us while we're on this earth. So we get to experience a little bit of that joy and those blessings here, but it'll be far greater when we get to heaven. Now, please understand that we don't save ourselves. There's nothing we can do to save ourselves. Practicing those spiritual disciplines is not going to get us into heaven. Jesus has already done that at the cross. And what you're doing is you're becoming more like Jesus every day when you put forth the effort to pray and to get to know him and to study his word. Anybody want to go? Yay! Yes, amen. All right, our close